Hello, derived energy. Yeah, okay, well, first off, into this logical thing and the asymmetry. Okay, basically, you're talking if you don't exist, you can't regret not being born. So the question is, are the unborn deprived in some way? And you're saying, no, they are not deprived in some way. And I am adding to that the fact that you can't say they are spared in some way either, right? Otherwise, I could say that to be born, they are deprived of being spared in some way. The fact is, if they're non-existent, they are not deprived by not existing, and they're also not spared by not suffering. Okay, you have to compare the non-existence suffering and their pleasure, and you have to compare the existing suffering and pleasure. And frankly, I don't think you can consider the non-existent. I'd rather talk about something, material like a rock. Would a rock be better off if it was living or not? And I'm curious, in your case, if you're denying that you say that there's this desire to live that is predominant, then why is the void disconcerting to you? Oh, but wait a second, you did admit that these terrible cases that you offer relief to are, what, 0.1%? Didn't you say 99.9%? Day to day isn't like that. So you're offering relief. Why wouldn't you have to include the probabilities? When you're saying, will I help them out by depriving them, shouldn't you have to do a statistical, survey to see, I am willing philosophically to say we don't know if people want to live or not, but the practical fact, for philosophical purposes, but the practical fact is, yes, if you ask them or check behaviorally, things do want to survive, which means they want to live. They act like they do. I use the personal pronoun because that's my experiences. I did not say, I managed it so everybody should. I did not say that. I said, here's the understanding I have of pleasure and pain and suffering that I'm abstracting. You don't think you're abstracting your understanding of it? I think you are, and if you don't use the personal pronoun when you're using your personal understanding of suffering and pleasure, then that's dishonest. Yes, death is sometimes preferable, and life is sometimes preferable. You think you can ignore the natural symmetry in that argument because you think there's this asymmetry in the deprivation of not getting a chance to live. That doesn't count because they're non-existent. But this fact that you spared them from pain also wouldn't count in that case. And you're trying to make that count. You specifically said that counts. And you're using hypothetical anecdotes, with heroin-addicted parents and being subjugated into slavery that you admit are super, super unlikely. So the weight of that argument is in proportion to its likelihood, okay, as far as I can see. The issue with the positive aspects of life is not so much that they're there, but their transformative nature. That you can actually, like in some more mild cases as a child, I didn't like certain chores that I grew up, I appreciated later, literally that actual event. I didn't just learn how to avoid it. Or, medical experiences. I didn't learn how to avoid them, but it did make me stronger about what I think of life and how I approach life. And I survived it, and I felt stronger because I was able to survive it. So it's more about, not that they're positive, but it's the fact that I have a very different way of doing the mathematics. I believe our experiences are transformative. We can experience them as suffering at one point, and then pain again later, and then we can experience them as a positive thing still later. We can go back, it can switch around, it can go the other way. You can have a pleasurable experience that later on is painful to think about. The fact that you had pleasure in it at the time could be painful to think about. So it's more about the fact that this proves that the pleasure and pain are interpretations we put on material events. So you can't really blame the existence, the materiality, the fact that you have materiality for that aspect, because it's interpretive. It's how the mind, and it gets back to our biology. We have systems that when you get cut on your finger, you don't have to have a system that interprets that as a feeling of pain that you feel. Your body does that because it's a terrible malady. When children, for example, are born without the ability to feel pain, they get burns and cuts, they don't cry, the parents don't know. They themselves don't know. They don't learn the habits of ordinary safety. So we have these things because they're helping us out, because it's possible to interpret pain as a positive thing in the fact that, you pull your hand out of the fire, that's positive. And the similarity between the reduction of suffering and pleasure, should give you a clue of why you can't say that we can't deprive the unborn, but we can spare them. You can either deprive them and spare them, or you can't do either. Now, I go for the you can't do either. I'd rather talk about a stone. Is a stone better off? Because it exists, but it doesn't appear cognitive. So assuming it's not cognitive, would it be better off if it was cognitive, if it was living and thinking and living in the world somehow? All right. Cheers.